I go to Target all the time. It's the main place where I do most of my shopping. The store has just about everything you could want, from groceries to electronics. It's also nicer in my opinion than competitors like Walmart and Costco. Anyways, this is something that happened last year that caused me to not go there for a while. It happened one night when I went to do my normal grocery shopping. I think I got to the Target a little bit later than I usually do. It was maybe like 8 o'clock at night. When I got inside, I got a cart and started walking around the store getting things. At one point, I remember that I was towards the back corner of the store in the grocery department. That's when I first noticed this one woman that was inside there. This woman was somewhat short, thin, and had long, kind of messy hair. What stood out about her the most was that she was just standing in like the exact corner of the store and staring at me. She didn't have a shopping cart or basket and wasn't holding anything. It just seemed really odd. I was getting something back there, maybe 30 feet away from her. I spent maybe a minute in the area, and when I was leaving, I walked sort of past her. I glanced and noticed that she was still staring at me. This was really weird. I mean, she hadn't really moved at all. What was she doing? As I walked away, I could feel her still staring at me. I certainly didn't know her at all. I moved on to another section of the grocery department. From there, I continued my shopping. Probably 10 minutes or so went by, but that's when I noticed her again. I was in an aisle, and there were a few people scattered around here and there, but I noticed a ways behind me, like 30 feet or so, was the same woman. I didn't really look at her to see if she was staring at me again or not. I really just noticed that she was there. I kept shopping like normal and was soon in another aisle. I saw the woman there as well. This was pretty weird to me. I still ignored it though and didn't let it bother me. Soon I was done shopping. I then walked to the front of the store towards the checkouts. When I was walking there, in a more open area, I noticed that the woman was trailing me. She was remaining a sort of far ways behind me, but was certainly following me. I really didn't know what to make of this. I got in line and waited to check out. When I did, the woman did not get in line behind me, but instead stood just inside of the clothing section, which was adjacent to the checkouts. Soon I was able to pay for my items and then be on my way. I walked out of the store, not bothering to look around and see if the woman was still following me. And I didn't notice her at all until I had made it to my vehicle. I got to my car, which was a smaller SUV. I opened up the back rear door and put several bags of groceries inside of it. That's when I saw the woman again. This time, she was just standing in an empty parking space, which was across and one over from my car. So she was once more maybe 30 feet or so away. I don't know if that's exactly how far away she was, but it's just my estimation. Anyways, I thought for just one brief second about talking to her. I was curious as to why she was being so weird, but I decided not to. I didn't know what she was capable of, and so I finished unloading the things and closed my trunk. Then I walked around to my driver's door and got inside. But just after I got inside my car, I heard the rear hatch open up. I looked back and saw the woman literally climbing into the back of my SUV. I asked her what on earth she was doing. At this point, she started climbing over the rear seats of my car, heading straight for me. It was a terrifying moment. When that happened, I decided to just leave my car. Again, I had no idea what she was planning to do. I took my keys out of the ignition and then got out of my driver's door. Then I basically just ran back inside of Target. The woman did not leave my car and chase after me. When I was safely inside, I called the police and reported the incident to them. I waited inside Target without seeing the woman until the police arrived. When they got there about 10 minutes later, I spoke with them briefly. Then they went to my car to look for the woman. She had left my car, but was found a short distance away, trying to break into another vehicle. After the police had apprehended her, I went back and looked at my car. Overall, it was fine, but inside, she took all of my groceries out of the bags and opened several things. It was really weird. This incident caused me to not go to Target for a while, but I have since returned. I really don't know what that woman's problem with me was. I used to work at a Target department store as a cashier. I worked there for almost 6 months, but ended up quitting. The scariest thing that happened was one random night when I was working a night shift. I don't remember what time I started or exactly when I got off either, but I was working as a cashier and helping countless customers. The store was decently busy, and there was a steady amount of people at my register. I remember towards the end of my shift, this guy with a beard came into my line. I don't recall what he bought, and we had a very normal interaction. I don't remember anything out of the ordinary, but I did remember him just because of his beard. It was very long and memorable. So anyways, he walked away, and then I helped the next person in line behind him. Probably 10 minutes or so after this, it was time for my final break of the night. I turned off the light to my check lane, helped the final customer, and then left. I walked to the front of the store and went down a quiet hallway to where our break room was. The break room had several tables, chairs, a refrigerator, and a TV. I sat down at a table and was the only person inside the entire break room at that time. So I just went on my phone like usual and caught up Snapchatting with friends and whatnot. About 5 minutes later, I noticed somebody come into the break room out of the corner of my eye, but I didn't really see them. The person then walked over and sat down right next to me at the table. When I looked up, I saw that it was the same bearded man from just minutes before. I was so confused as to what he was doing here. He didn't work at Target, so why would he be in the break room? The man told me that I had to go with him. I was asking him, "What are you talking about?" He said that we should go right now and was pointing towards the exit. There was an employee's entrance down the hallway from the break room. I asked the guy who he was, and he said that he would tell me later. Then the man stood up and said once more to leave with him. Now, obviously, this seemed crazy to me, and I had no intentions of doing so. Then he started to grab my arm to get me to stand up as well. I stood up but resisted, and I tried to start to walk away from him. When this happened, I suddenly heard the door open from behind. I looked back and saw one of my coworkers, Brian, entering the break room. He looked very confused by what he was seeing. I remember that the man tried pulling my arm to get me to go with him again, but I was still resisting. That's when Brian asked what was going on. The man finally let go of my arm and then ran away towards the employee's exit. I went over to Brian and told him the story. I said that I was so happy he walked in when he did. Looking back, I don't know what would have happened if he didn't. Brian went to see if the guy had left, and he did. Another coworker came into the break room a short time later, and we all talked about what happened. After that, I went back to work and finished up my shift. For the next several days, everything was fine. I worked one other time without any kinds of problems, but I remember that my next shift after that, I was working at night again. Things had been going by like normal. I had a few customers in my checkout line at probably about 9 o'clock. I remember that I casually looked up and suddenly saw the same bearded man in line. He didn't have any items with him. I had a really bad feeling about this. When it was his turn, I told him that I was going to call the police if I ever saw him again. The man laughed a little and said that he would be waiting for me when I got off. Then he just walked away and left. I went straight for my manager after that and told her about what had happened. We decided to call the police. They came out and we spoke with them about the situation. Then they went into the parking lot and actually found the man standing in the parking lot near my vehicle. It gave me the creeps when I heard that. I'm really glad that we called the police. I ended up getting a restraining order against the guy and haven't seen him since. This is something that took place many years ago when I was a child. I believe I was about 7 years old. One day I went shopping with my mother and younger sister at Target. It was a common place for my entire family to go and get whatever. When we got there, my sister was sitting in the shopping cart and my mother was pushing it. Then I was walking alongside her. We walked around the store getting things for a while. I remember that we got to like the back end of the store, sort of near the corner. I don't remember what department it was, but it was not the groceries, I know that. So as my mother was shopping around, somehow I wound up in like the next aisle over from her. I'm not sure if I was distracted by something on the shelf or what, but I was still really close by. That's when I saw a Target employee approaching from I'm not even sure where. It was a man wearing the classic red shirt and khakis. He approached me, and I just remember he asked if I wanted to see something really cool. Of course I did, and I said yes. Then he told me to follow him and started walking away. But he didn't go very far before there were these doors that led to the back room. I had always seen these doors in stores, and I knew that I wasn't allowed to go past them. I had also always wondered what was behind those doors and what was in the back room of the store. So he opened them and told me that I could go in. I was really curious, and I also thought that it was so cool that he was showing me this. I walked in after him, and then he closed the doors behind us. It was almost like he was giving me a tour, and he was pointing at stuff and telling me what it was for. I remember that he said that's where they kept all the items before they went out into the store. We continued to walk farther into the back a little bit. By now, I had sort of forgot about going back to my mother and sister. I was just really interested in what I was seeing. I felt like it was okay that I was back here because this guy worked at Target. Then I remembered that this other guy, who also appeared to be an employee, walked over to us. He said hi, and then the three of us kept walking. Then I remember seeing this other door that led to outside. The men told me that I should see where the deliveries were made, and said that I could go outside. This is when I first had a bad feeling. For some reason, I hadn't found it to be a problem to walk in the back with the man. But now that I was being asked to actually go outside, it felt completely different. I knew that my mother would be upset if I left the building. I stopped, even though they were encouraging me to leave. I said no thanks, and then started to walk back. My mother was probably looking for me, and I said that I had to go back to her. I remember the two guys were saying it was fine and she was okay with it, but I knew that they hadn't spoken to her, so I got more suspicious then. I started to kind of walk back towards the back doors that we had come in through. That's when one of the men started walking towards me aggressively. That was enough to make me start running away. I sprinted as fast as I could towards the back doors. I heard the guy running right after me. I remember that I just barely reached the doors and opened them. The man reached me right as I did, but my mom was right on the other side of the doors and saw me come out of there. The man noticed this and then turned and ran away. My mom asked me why I had been in the back room. When I told her the story, she went back there herself with me to see if the men had gone, but they weren't back there anymore. The back door that had been open leading to outside was also now closed. I remember my mother found one of the store managers and it led to a big thing. I don't really remember much else after that. Looking back though, I'm just really glad that I realized when I did to go back to my mother. I don't think either of those men really worked at Target at all. For some background to this story, I'm a female. This happened when I went to Target last year to do some shopping. I was going to be getting quite a few things. I went to Target maybe once a week on average and got groceries and other stuff. Sometimes I would spend a long time there, and it's been one of my favorite stores for a long time. I went there one night after work, and it was maybe 7 p.m. or so. I was shopping around, getting a lot of the normal things that I usually did. At one point, I was sort of in the middle of the store. It was at the start of the clothing section, but also near some aisles with other things like games and sporting goods. It was at that moment when this man approached me. He said hi, and then said that he had to show me something funny. He said to follow him quick. I didn't know what he was talking about, but I did follow him. I left my cart and we only went like one aisle just around the corner. He showed me some Lego product on the shelf and made a joke about it, but I didn't really understand it. I don't even remember exactly what he said, but overall I was just kind of confused. I just know that I laughed to be nice, and it was kind of awkward. Then the guy said that's all and he told me to have a good night. So I walked back over to my cart, and then continued with what I was doing. I didn't really think much of the interaction after that. I would say I spent maybe 10 more minutes inside the Target shopping. Then I checked out and left. I got back to my house and then unpacked everything that I got. At this time, I lived in a smaller house by myself. So that very same night, after I went to bed, I woke up sometime. I'm a really light sleeper, so I didn't really know what woke me at first, but I just knew that it was a little bit after midnight. I was going to just go right back to bed, but then I heard a noise coming from the other room. That made me completely awake and more alert. I listened to the noise and couldn't tell what exactly it was at first. I was so curious, so I got up and left my bedroom. Then I moved towards the back of the house where the living room was. That's where the noise was coming from, and right when I entered the room, I saw someone at the window. I couldn't tell any details about them, but could just see that someone was right outside the window. I stopped where I was, just about a step into the room, and I didn't go any farther in. Then I saw that there appeared to be another guy at my back door. 2 people were outside of my house. To me, it seemed like the noise was actually coming from the back door area. It wasn't very loud, and I didn't really know what exactly they were doing. I ran out of the room and into a small closet in my hallway. I decided to hide in there, and then I called the police on my cell phone. I said that I thought 2 people were possibly trying to break in. Now, I didn't turn on any lights or anything when I got up, so I don't think the men knew that I was awake. As I was hiding in the closet, I realized that. I considered leaving the closet to turn on a light and see if that would cause the men to leave my property, but I couldn't gather up the courage to do so. I was hidden in the closet and did not want to get out. Inside of it, though, I could barely hear the noises. If I was completely still, I could just sort of hear them. They seemed to come and go, and that went on for the next several minutes, but the police ended up getting there much faster than I thought they would. Probably 5 minutes after I made the 911 call, I heard more louder noises. At first, I was scared by it, until I realized that the people talking were police. I left the closet at that point, and realized that nobody had broken in. After that, I went to the window and saw the police with 2 men. It was at that point that I recognized one of the guys. He was the man that talked to me earlier that same night when I was at Target. I was really confused as to what was going on. The police told me that the men appeared to be attempting to break into my house. I told them how I had seen one of the guys at Target and stuff. There was a whole investigation done, and I found out some shocking details. An AirTag was found inside of my purse. It had been in my shopping cart when I was at Target. The first guy must have distracted me, while the other guy put the AirTag inside of my purse. Why they chose me, I don't know, but I'm really glad that I woke up so easily and called the police before the men were able to get inside of my house. I used to work at Target. This is something that happened back in 2017. Back then, I was a senior in high school and working as a cashier part-time. I would work a lot of afternoon to night shifts, and there were some other people around my age who also worked there. I made a few friends with some coworkers over the months that I was at Target. There was one coworker in particular, though, named Evan. He always seemed kind of strange, and it wasn't just me that thought that. Some coworkers talked to me about some weird things that he would say, or strange things that he would do. He worked in another department of the store, I can't remember where. But aside from saying strange things or somewhat creepy things, he would sometimes just stare at people. One thing I noticed in particular was he would sit in his car across from mine a lot. He was around my age, so we would often work similar shifts, and I would always park in the same general area of the parking lot. Many times when I got off of work and walked out to my car, I would get in only to see Evan already sitting in his car, and his car would be facing mine. He would often just be sitting in his car, kind of staring at me. I would usually leave pretty quickly then, and I figured it to be a coincidence at first. I mean, it didn't happen every time, but it did happen quite a bit. One time though, I knew for a fact that Evan got off of work about 3 hours before I did. When I got to my car that night, I was shocked to see him sitting in his car still, and he was staring at me. I quickly left like usual, and he stayed there. I figured that maybe his car was broken or something. I really didn't know why he was often there like that, but I wasn't jumping to any conclusions. One of the next times that I worked though, Evan did not work. Everything went by pretty normal. I think I got off at 9 p.m. and then clocked out and left to head home. During this time, I lived with my parents, almost 10 minutes away from the Target. When I got back to my car, I saw Evan was once again sitting in his car across from mine and looking at me. He wasn't wearing his work clothes and hadn't worked at all today, so I found this to be odd. But like most times, I just started up my car and then left. However, when I left this time, Evan actually left right after me. After leaving the parking lot, I went onto the road and then merged onto the highway. Evan was still following me in his car at this point. I hadn't noticed this happening before, so I drove most of the way home, not knowing if he was following me or not. I mean, I didn't know where he lived. When I turned off the highway though, he did as well. I drove all the way to my street, which was pretty close by. After pulling onto my street, Evan did the same. Now I knew that I couldn't go to my house, so I drove past it. Then, when I reached the end of my street, I turned and went back onto a busier road. I remembered then to go to a police station when you're being followed, so when I got back onto the highway, I put in directions to the nearest one, and Evan continued to follow me all the way there until I pulled in. Then, at that point, I saw him start to turn around on the road in his car. I stayed in the parking lot of the police station for several minutes, and then left to go back home. I felt much better now that he wasn't following me anymore. When I was driving back home, I was careful to look behind me and stuff. I didn't notice him at all. Soon, I had reached my street. When I pulled onto it though, there was this car parked on the side of the road. I saw it start to move after I passed it, and I realized that it was Evan. He must have somehow known this was my street. I didn't know what to do, so I just pulled into my driveway. Then I got out of my car as quickly as I could and ran inside the house. When I got in, I saw Evan's car on the side of the road out front. I didn't hesitate and I called the police. But then, just about a minute later, he left. The police came out and I told them of the situation. I could give them a lot of details about Evan because I knew his name and where he worked. After that, the next time that I worked at Target, I reported what happened to my manager. I learned that Evan had been fired recently from Target for inappropriate behavior, and not long after that, I found out that he had actually followed home another coworker a different time. He had also recently been arrested for stalking yet a different woman. This guy was a total creep. I'm really glad that I don't have to worry about him anymore. I used to work at Target a couple of years ago. I worked inside the store on the sales floor and mostly on the grocery side. During this time, I was a part-time employee and I worked maybe 20 to 30 hours a week. One night, I was working a pretty standard shift for me. It was from 4 p.m. to 10 p.m. When it started, things were kind of busy. I would move all around one side of the store and do whatever I needed to, mainly stock shelves or organize things. I also answered customer questions and told them where certain items were if they wanted to know. I'd been working there for about 6 months at the time, and I knew the store like the back of my hand. So fast forward to about 9:30 p.m. or so that night. By then, the store had become very quiet. We were open until 11 p.m. back then, so we were not about to close, but it was still very quiet. Many of my coworkers had left, and the overnight team was beginning to arrive. On the grocery side, though, it was easy to stay busy. That side always had more shoppers, so it required more attention. All of the employees at Target carry a walkie-talkie for communication. I heard somebody say my name on the walkie, and I responded to them. I wasn't sure who it was, but they told me to go to the next channel, so I did. I was used to people calling me on there, and had received several calls earlier in the night. When you got a call on the walkie, usually it was anything from taking your break to being needed in another section of the store. As I was flipping to the next channel, I was wondering who it was that was calling me. After changing channels, I announced that I was there. At first, I heard nothing at all. Then, after a few seconds, I heard this creepy-sounding laugh. It went on, and I spoke again, asking who it was that was talking to me. They didn't answer though, and just kept laughing. Once more, I asked who it was, but was starting to suspect that it was a joke. Then they stopped laughing and said my name. It was a man speaking in a very deep voice, like he was trying to disguise it. He said that he was waiting for me in the parking lot. I laughed a little, assuming that it was somebody just messing around. After all, most of us were just about done for the night. I still couldn't figure out who it was, though. I kept working, and pretty soon was done and could clock out. I went into the employee-only area, got my things, and then left the store. Now, the parking lot was very quiet. Most of the cars belonged to employees and were parked towards the middle. Then there was my car, parked near the way back corner. It had been very busy when I arrived. So when I was walking out to my car and about halfway there, I noticed one other car parked near mine. It was a few rows over and to the left, at least 100 feet away, but the engine was running. When I reached my vehicle and was just a few feet from it, I noticed the car starting to drive. I really wasn't thinking anything of it until it began heading in my direction. And not only that, but it started going really fast. I didn't recognize the car as belonging to anybody that I knew. It quickly drove closer and I got inside of my car and locked the door. Then the car parked in the space next to mine, but going in the opposite direction. I looked over, but the window was really tinted and I couldn't really see in. It was at that moment that I remembered what the person had said to me on the walkie. Was that not a joke? I sort of had a bad feeling about this. Still, I figured that I would just drive home, and I hoped that whoever this was would not follow me. As soon as I started to pull away, though, the car started driving and turned around. I then realized that's exactly what was going on. I turned and started heading back towards Target. I didn't want to drive home being followed. I drove back towards the front middle of the parking lot and closer to the store. This was where most of the other cars were parked and scattered around. I parked in between two other cars that were parked already. The car that was following me drove closer, but then parked across and a little ways back. Now it was maybe 50 feet away from me. Then I got out of my car and walked extremely fast for the entrance of Target. I looked back briefly and saw that the car was still running, but nobody got out. That made me feel a little bit better. After I made it inside Target, I saw one of my coworkers who I knew walking by, and I told him about what happened. We both decided to look and see if the car was still there. After making it to the entrance doors, we looked out and I pointed to the car. We watched it, and then something surprising happened. It pulled out of the parking space that it had backed into. Then it slowly drove up the aisle and out of sight. The car had finally left. I then left Target once more and headed for my vehicle. I walked quickly and made it inside. Then I started the engine and backed out. But after I backed out, I was going to drive down the normal way that I usually left. But it was then that I saw a car in the far distance coming from the corner of the parking lot opposite to me. It was headed in my direction, and I was pretty sure that it was the same car. I scrambled to turn my car to face the other direction. The car was still really far away from me, but it was getting closer. Then I quickly drove out of the lesser-used back exit of Target. This road led to another quieter road that went behind another store that was nearby. I think that it was a sporting goods store, and after I went on the road, I went into the parking lot. From there, I drove all the way around the sporting goods store and parked on the side of it. I knew that the car following me would have no way of knowing that I was there. It probably assumed that I just tried to get back on the highway. I waited there, just hoping that I would not see headlights coming around the corner. Several minutes went by, and thankfully, I didn't. Then, I was finally able to leave and go home. After that experience, nothing like that happened while working at Target. I don't know who it was that was talking to me that night on the walkie. It was very possible to get on our frequency, even if you were in the parking lot. I just don't know who would do it, or why. I had a really strange and creepy experience when I went to Target several weeks ago. I went shopping for a few items, and I go to Target all the time. After I got there, I was towards one of the far back corners of the store. It was very quiet over there, as the time was about 8:30 p.m., and there were not very many shoppers anymore. Out of nowhere, I saw a guy come around a corner from the next aisle. I realized that he was a Target employee. He had dark brown hair and was somewhat tall, maybe 6 feet. He walked up to me and said hi. Then he asked me if I needed help finding anything. I said no thanks, I know where everything I'm getting is, but I appreciate the help. He then offered to show me some items that were on sale, which I also declined. He said okay, and then just kind of walked off. Now, nothing was strange about that interaction, but then I continued my shopping and took maybe 15 more minutes inside the store. Then I headed to the checkouts, paid for my things, and left. I was parked towards one side of the store and about halfway back in the parking lot. I walked up to my car and then began unloading all of my things into the trunk of my car. When I was doing this, again, out of almost nowhere, I heard somebody approaching me from behind. I turned around to see the same guy who spoke to me inside of Target, but he was not wearing his Target employee uniform. Now he was just wearing sweatpants and a black jacket with the hood up. I still instantly recognized him and was very confused. The man asked me if I could give him a ride. He was like, "Hi, I was wondering if you could please give me a ride." I told him that I would not be able to do that. The guy seemed really sketchy, and that's not even because of the fact that he had just been working at Target like 15 minutes ago. After I said no, he was still standing there, and I could tell that he was going to ask me again. I said, "Don't you work here?" I was thinking maybe it would be better for him to ask a coworker for a ride or something. He said no, he didn't work there. I told him that he had just talked to me in the store a little bit earlier, but he completely denied it. Now, I know for a fact 100% that it was him. Now he was only seeming more sketchy to me. Then he told me that he didn't need a ride very far, just a little ways. I told him once again that I couldn't do it. Then I firmly turned and walked away from him and for my car. I got inside and then closed and locked the door. The man started to walk over to my driver's side door. Luckily, nobody was parked directly in front of me and I could pull right out. I drove off, leaving him standing there. After leaving, I wondered what his deal was. Why was he pretending to work at Target and then asking me for a ride? I really have no idea, but the whole thing still seems pretty sketchy to me. I'm glad that I got away from him. I'm a former Target employee and worked in the clothing department mainly. I worked there for 7 months total, and I liked working there. It was a good job, and most of the coworkers, as well as customers, were nice. But there was one coworker that I had some problems with. It was a guy named Ed, and he worked in the electronics department. Over time, I got to know him a little bit. Not that well, though. There's a lot of turnover at a store like Target, but also many employees that stick around. So the people in all departments that worked there for most of the time that I did, I either recognized or got to know. I only spoke to Ed briefly once or twice for the first several months. I was much closer with many other coworkers. But one time, I was taking my break and was by myself in the break room. I think it was a little bit later at night, and that's why nobody else was in there. Well, just a couple of minutes after I got in there, Ed entered and then started talking to me. He was friendly for the most part and asked me some things about myself, and I was friendly back to him. But then, like 5 minutes into the conversation, he asked if I wanted to hang out with him and suggested that he could come over to my house. Now, I really didn't want to hang out with him, and I especially didn't want him coming over. I said I didn't think that I could, and then I changed the subject because it was kind of awkward. We talked for the rest of my break. Well, it was mostly Ed talking, and I was just listening. Finally, I was back to work. I didn't really see Ed for the rest of my shift that night, but over the next week or two, Ed started to talk to me more and more. He would go out of his way to see me, and he asked me again if he could come over to my house. He was starting to be a bit of a creep, to be honest with you. After that, though, I kind of stopped seeing him. I didn't really think about it until I heard that he had been fired. I didn't get any details on why he had been fired or exactly when. I also didn't really give it that much thought, other than realizing that he wouldn't be talking to me anymore. So for the next week or so, work went on as usual. But one day, I was not at work, but back home in my apartment. I got a text message from Ed. At first, I didn't know who it was, because I didn't recognize the number. I did not have Ed's number, but I was part of a large Target group chat with a bunch of us coworkers. Anybody in it could see my number, and I guess Ed was still a part of it. He texted me saying that it was him, and told me that he was going to come over to my house. I was thinking, what's up with this guy and going to my house? I texted him back saying, "Please don't come to my house, Ed. It was nice to work with you at Target, but I don't think we should hang out." I expected him to understand, but apparently he didn't. Now, he didn't respond to what I said, so I wasn't sure if he was mad or not, or if he even read it. But a few hours went by, and that night I was still at home. I lived by myself in my apartment, which was on the first floor of my building. It was probably like 9 o'clock at night when Ed texted me back finally. He said that he was at my house. When I read those words, I instantly started sweating and my heart began racing. How did he know where I lived? Was he really at my house? I started to text back, but didn't know what to say. I went over to my door and looked out the peephole into the hallway. Nobody was there. Maybe he was at my apartment, but not in the building yet. I looked out of my back window as well and didn't see anything. I hoped that he wasn't actually there, but it was a really strange thing to say if he wasn't. Finally, I texted back, telling Ed that I wasn't at home. I thought that maybe that would make him leave if he was here, or deter him from coming over if he wasn't. But he responded by saying, "Yes, you are home. I saw you." When I read that text, I started looking around like a paranoid person. My mind was racing. I was thinking crazy thoughts, like maybe he was already inside of my apartment, hiding under my bed or something. But he wasn't. I looked in all of my rooms. I then texted him back, asking him where he was. He responded by saying, "At my house." I was confused by this, and I looked out of the peephole and windows again without seeing him. I started to think that maybe he was just joking. At least, that's what I was trying to convince myself. I went back over to my peephole again and looked out of it. I was looking out of it for like a minute straight, but still, nobody was there. I turned around, and then I saw him. He was standing on my patio, right outside of my sliding door, and looking in. I screamed like crazy and then ran from my bedroom. I locked myself inside of it and then called the police. A few moments later, I heard a knocking on my sliding door. I got another text from Ed telling me to let him in and asking me why I screamed. I ignored it and told the 911 dispatcher what the situation was. They told me that an officer would be there shortly. Ed then tried calling me, but I didn't answer and ignored it. He texted me several more times, and I put my phone down because I didn't even want to look at it. It was then that I started to hear a loud banging coming from my sliding door. He really wanted me to let him in. This went on for the next several minutes. It honestly felt like forever. At last, the police arrived. I heard Ed talking with them loudly, and I left the bathroom. I soon saw him talking with officers, and they eventually got him to leave. Then I spoke with the officers, and I told my side of the story. Ed ended up getting trespassed from my apartment's property, and he was told not to come back. Luckily, I haven't seen him since then. I haven't heard from him either. Obviously, I blocked his number and stuff. Hopefully, I never hear from him again. One of the scariest moments of my life happened when I went to Target last year. I went there one night to do some normal grocery shopping. There's a Target not that far at all from where I live, and I go there almost weekly. So I got there sometime at night, and I don't recall exactly when. I went inside, got a cart, and then started getting my items. I was inside of the store probably for about 20 minutes shopping at least. Then I finally checked out and left the store. I headed back to my car, which I had parked not even that far away. But when I arrived at my vehicle, which is a pretty normal sedan, something happened. I was behind it and about to go around and put the groceries in the back seat. That's when I saw somebody looking at me through the back window from inside my car. It was a man, and I didn't see him well at all because he ducked down less than a second after I saw him. I freaked out and left the cart there and went running back inside of the Target. After making it back inside, I dialed 911 to call the police. I told them that somebody was inside my car at the Target. Then I waited inside the store for the police to arrive. It took probably less than 5 minutes for them to get there, but in the meantime, when I was waiting, I was standing just a little ways inside of the Target near the first aisle. As I was waiting for the police, I was sure that I saw the guy that was in my car enter the store. He immediately walked to the right and didn't appear to notice me. I wasn't 100% sure, because like I said, I only saw him for probably less than a second inside my car window, but I was probably about 80% sure. I went down one of the aisles in case he was looking for me or something. A short time later, the police arrived. I went out of the store with them and we checked my vehicle. Whoever was inside of it was now gone, but my doors were all unlocked. I must have somehow forgot to lock them when I went inside of Target. I didn't have anything inside my car worth stealing though. I usually kept it pretty empty and clean. Still, what was a random man doing inside of my car? I had never seen him before. I gave his description to the police, and I also let them know that I thought I saw him inside Target. I made it clear that I wasn't 100% sure, but I was pretty certain that it was him, and it made me think that it was more likely to be him after knowing he wasn't in my car anymore. The man had dark hair, was sort of short, and wearing a tan t-shirt and jeans. He also appeared to be pretty young, in probably his 20s or maybe early 30s. The police told me that they would go into Target and see if he was still there. I stayed by my car talking to another officer for maybe 5 or 10 more minutes. Another officer said they did not locate the man inside Target and figured that he must have left. They said they would take one more look around the store, and I could go home if I wanted to. At that point, I finally left to drive home. Now, the Target that I go to is near a lot of other stores, but the way that I exit is I drive down the road to the side of Target. Then I go down this quiet road that leads to more stores about a quarter mile down the road. When I was driving down that road, I saw this guy randomly walking alongside of it. It was weird because there was no sidewalk there and it wasn't very well lit, so you wouldn't really expect people to walk along it. Just seconds later is when I realized that it was the same guy. As I was approaching him, he turned and saw me. That's when he bolted out onto the street suddenly. It was like he was running towards me, and I veered to the right to avoid him. I wasn't going very fast, but luckily he didn't get to me, and I was able to successfully get around him. Then I sped away from him as he stood in the road. No other cars were nearby, and I got out my phone and called the police to report the guy. After that, I was finally able to make it back home okay. Looking back, I still can't believe that it happened. I avoided that Target for weeks after the events. Finally, I was able to go back, and I still shop there sometimes. Nothing like that has happened, and I haven't seen the guy either. I'm hoping that whoever he was, the police found him, or he stopped his wild behavior. I used to be a manager at a Target for a few years. I actually worked at the Target for a long time. I started as a cashier in high school and then worked there part-time in college. The degree that I got in college helped me to become a manager, but I also moved up over the years. So I knew the store very well, and at the time of this story, I had been working there for 8 years. I was working one night on a seemingly normal Thursday. It had been pretty busy from about 5 p.m. until 7, and now that it was a little bit past 7, things were starting to quiet down. I was watching over the check lanes among other things, and then I received a call about something. It wasn't very clear about what exactly was going on, but I immediately headed to the aisle that I was told to. When I got there, I saw that one of our team members, Chloe, was there, as well as another team member, Tim. There was also a man with them who was a guest, and the three of them seemed to be having a disagreement. When I got there, Tim said that the guy was harassing Chloe and following her around the store. The man instantly started denying it and was really aggressive. Chloe was also saying that the man had been following her around, and then the man started shouting over them. I went over to the man, and I asked him what was going on. He started cursing at me almost immediately. It was clear that I wasn't going to be able to have a conversation with this guy, and at that point, I asked him to leave, which he did not take well. I told him that I was going to call the police if he did not leave immediately, and he finally started walking away, heading towards the front of the store. Several other people standing around were all staring at us. I followed the man all the way to the front of the store. Before leaving, though, he stopped and cursed me out almost at the top of his lungs. I couldn't even really make out everything that he said, but basically, he was just saying that he didn't do anything wrong and how dare we accuse him. He went on to say that I was terrible at my job and that he was going to sue me and a bunch of other stuff. At last, he finally left. I had come pretty close to actually calling the police on him. After the man left the store, it was a huge relief, and I then went back over to Chloe and asked her about the situation. She told me that when she was working, she started to notice this guy staring at her from a ways away. After she saw him looking at her for like 30 seconds straight, she moved. He then moved and got closer to her. Then she said that she moved aisles about 4 more times, and each time the man moved with her. He didn't even seem to be doing any shopping. The man then approached her in one of the aisles, and she questioned him why he was following her. He denied it, and that's when Tim, who was working nearby, overheard and tried to intervene. Tim said that he even noticed the man walking down 2 aisles after her and was wondering what was going on. It sounded like this guy was just a creep. After speaking with Chloe and Tim for about 10 minutes regarding the situation, I got another call. This time, it was from our cart attendant who was working out in the parking lot. He said somebody was speeding around the parking lot recklessly. I then headed up to the front of the store and met our cart attendant just inside the doors. We looked out, and there was a car going up and down the parking aisles at a speed way too fast. Thankfully, it was later at night, and nobody was out walking to or from their cars at the moment, but it was still extremely dangerous. I could hear the tires squealing as the car went down one row and then up the next. It was like he was doing laps around the parking lot as fast as he possibly could and making sure to hit each aisle. I called the police right then and there, reporting a reckless driver in the Target parking lot. The police were on the way, and I watched from the exit doors and stopped any guests from leaving the store until the car was gone. Even though the store wasn't very busy, pretty soon there was about 10 people waiting around the doors watching this maniac. Then, when he was going up one of the aisles, he appeared to lose control and he crashed into a parked car. It wasn't that bad of a collision, and nobody was inside of the other car, thankfully, but after hitting it, the man's car skidded forward a bit and then came to a stop in the middle of the aisle. The driver's door then opened and a man emerged. Big surprise, it was the same guy who had been following Chloe around. I was shocked, but also not surprised at all at the same time. The guy then took off running out of the parking lot towards the parking lot of a nearby restaurant. The police got there shortly after. Several of us spoke to officers as other officers searched for the man. They caught him a very short time later. He turned out to be drunk and must have went on that joyride out of spite or something. I really don't know, but he seemed crazy to me. I'm just glad that the police caught him, so he couldn't do any more harm. Last week, I went to Target after the gym just to get some milk. It was a weekday morning and probably like 11 a.m. I went to the Target not that far away from my apartment and went inside. I walked straight for the grocery department, which was at the far other end of the store. Things didn't seem all that busy at first. When I got to the groceries, I found the milk, took one, and then walked up to the checkout. When I got near the check lanes, I saw that there was a very long line. I was kind of surprised because the store wasn't even that busy, but there was nothing that I could do. I waited in line and things moved slowly. After probably 5 minutes or so of waiting, finally it was my turn at one of the self-check lanes. It didn't take me long at all to pay for the milk, and then I was on my way and left the store. I walked to my car that was at the back of the parking lot and got inside. It was then that I saw I had a new text message on my phone from a number not familiar to me. I opened it up and saw a picture of myself waiting in line inside Target, taken just minutes earlier. It was taken from near the exit doors and kind of zoomed in. I thought it must be from one of my friends and they were playing a joke on me or something. I had gotten a new phone not that long before this, so it must have been why I didn't recognize the number. I was thinking of which friend it would be that would go there. When I was inside, I definitely hadn't seen anybody that I knew or recognized. I texted back, asking who it was. Whoever had sent me the text responded pretty quickly. So fast that I saw it before I even put my phone down. It said in all caps, "Your stalker." Obviously, this still seemed like a joke to me. I replied something like, LOL, and then I set my phone down to drive home. I went back to my apartment, which is a 4-story building with a large parking lot. When I arrived back, I saw that I had a new text, and I looked at it before getting out of my car. The text said, "No, really." I responded again by asking who this was that was texting me. They responded very quickly once more, but it was a picture. I looked at it and saw that it was of the back of my car. I looked behind me in the parking lot and saw a car parked directly behind me in the other row. I could see somebody in the driver's seat but couldn't make out any details. Whoever it was appeared to be wearing a hat and sunglasses. I didn't recognize them or the car as anybody that I knew though. By now, I was really creeped out and I was afraid to go inside my apartment. Maybe whoever it was would try to follow me inside. I blocked the number and then backed out of my parking space and started driving away. I hadn't noticed the car following me to my apartment at all, but I now noticed it following me out of the parking lot. When I left my apartment complex, I merged onto a busier road. There were lots of cars going both ways. The car behind me followed as I drove a little ways down. I came up to a flashing yellow arrow to turn left, and I got in the left turn lane. Traffic was thick, and cars were coming non-stop, so I was unable to turn immediately. Then, finally, when the light turned to a solid yellow, I had an opportunity to go. But I waited until the very last moment, when the cars were starting to come from the opposite direction. By the time I went, the car behind me couldn't go and was stuck at the light. I was able to get away for a few minutes, and I drove right back to my apartment complex. This time, when I got there, I parked on the other side of the parking lot. Then, I quickly went inside. I didn't even bother to look out the window to the parking lot to see if the person came back. But after that, I didn't receive any more strange texts. I haven't seen them since either. I worked at a super Target for almost 2 years. I quit just a couple of months ago and have gotten another job since then. But working at Target was good for the most part. When I was first hired, I started out as a cashier. But after a few months, I changed and worked around the store and only did cashier when an extra one was needed. Usually that was just at busier times or if somebody called in. So this story is something that happened probably about a year ago maybe. I was working at night and things were pretty quiet. I was back, sort of near the electronics department, which is at the back center of the store. It was then that a man approached me and said that he needed help with something. The guy was sort of tall and I remember was wearing a black sweatshirt. I asked him how I could help, and he said that he was looking for some plates. He asked me if I could show him where they were and said that he had been looking around for a while. I said that I could, and I knew exactly where they were. I understood how it might be hard for him to find them. We would remodel our store and organize it quite often, and we're always updating things. The plates and silverware were in the far back corner of the store, which is generally a quieter area. The man followed me as I walked over there, which didn't take very long. Soon we made it to the general area. When I was approaching the aisle at the far back corner, I noticed something a little bit strange. There were 3 other men standing around near the plates. Each of them was wearing a ski mask over their heads. I couldn't tell who they were or anything because of this. They were all just standing there, facing me, and when I started to approach, they looked at me. This seemed very suspicious and gave me a bad feeling. Why were they all wearing ski masks, and what were they doing? They didn't seem to be looking at anything, but when I came into view, they were suddenly all looking at me. I only saw them for probably 3 or 4 seconds, and then I turned and walked down the very next aisle to get out of there. When I did, I heard the first guy who had been following me say to wait, but I didn't. I just kept walking and got out of that area. I felt better when I was a few aisles away. The guy did not keep following me, and I was now by myself. I didn't bother to look back to see if the guys were still there or not. I went to another area of the store and went back to work doing what I had been going to do before the guy asked me for help. As I was over there, I was wondering what exactly was going on. I still didn't know why those guys were wearing masks. Most people don't just go into a store wearing ski masks unless they're planning to rob the place or something. I looked around as I worked, but I didn't see any of the other guys. After several minutes, I decided to go back over and see if they were still there. I'm not sure if I was just really curious or what. I walked over to the corner of the store, and when I got there, saw nobody. There wasn't really anybody at all in that immediate area. By then, it was probably about 9 p.m., and there weren't many shoppers at all. The ones that were inside the store were mostly on the other side where groceries were. I worked until 10 p.m., so I only had about an hour left and went back to work in the meantime. During that final hour of work, I did not see any of the men. Then, at 10 o'clock, the store closed, and I walked up to the front, clocked out, and left. There was a door in the middle for employees only where I would leave. As I left the store and started walking through the parking lot to my vehicle, there were still a decent amount of cars there. Quite a few people worked overnights at Target, and some others hadn't left yet that were still there. but I hadn't even made it that far when I spotted a car with about 4 people in it. I immediately noticed the men wearing masks as the same men who had been inside the store earlier. The car was a ways away, but I saw the people inside turn and look at me as I approached. I turned right back around when I saw this and walked for the employee door that I had come out of. The employee door was only about 20 feet away, and when I got back to it, somebody else was leaving. That allowed me to go back inside of the store. When I was in there, I went into the break room and just waited. I had a really bad feeling about those guys. I wasn't sure why they were still there either. About 15 minutes later, I went back out and checked, and the men were now gone. After that, I walked out to my vehicle and left. I never saw those people again after that, although the only one I would have recognized was the guy who had asked me for help. Everybody else had been wearing a ski mask over their face. My theory is that it was some type of a setup. I was lucky to get away as early as I did. I worked at Target, pushing carts out in the parking lot for a little bit more than a year. The Target that I worked at was very large, so I was kept busy most of the time. This particular story took place one night when I was working until 11 p.m., which is when we closed. I don't remember exactly when I started, but by the ends of my shifts, my legs would be so tired from walking so much. I would end up going all around the parking lot and even to the sides of the buildings a little bit. I had to get every single cart from the parking lot or else my boss would yell at me. And people wouldn't always put carts back where they belonged in the cart return areas either. They would be lazy and leave them next to their parking space, or others would try to leave it by a curb. Each time I worked, there would be at least one that would somehow wind up at the far corner of the parking lot or on the side of the building. A couple of times, carts even got into nearby businesses' parking lots, which drove my boss crazy. So because of this, I was always keeping an eye out for carts anywhere they could possibly be. My eyes were trained to see the bright red color of the shopping carts and to go and get it wherever it was. On this night, when things were quieting down at maybe 8 p.m. or so, I was walking around the parking lot. I always liked it when things quieted down. Obviously, it was less busy, which meant less carts, but also I would not have to rush or worry about cars driving by me as much as I pushed the carts around. It was during this time that I was walking to the west side of the building just to make sure that there were no carts there. Along that side of the building was a quiet road leading to the back where some deliveries were made. It wasn't really used for typical cars. Next to that road was a grassy area with some trees, and then next to that was the road where cars would take to leave. As I looked over there, I saw there was a man there, and I wasn't really sure what he was doing. It was very unusual for people to be there, because there wasn't really any reason for it. The guy did not see me, and I didn't think that much of it. When I saw there were no carts over there, I just walked away. I went around the rest of the parking lot collecting shopping carts here and there. But about 30 minutes later, I was still in the parking lot, and I was walking to get some carts. I saw a man entering the Target store, and it was the same guy who I had seen on the side of the building. But now, he was wearing a Target employee uniform. He had a red shirt and khakis on, and he hadn't been wearing that before. I thought it was a little bit odd because I didn't recognize him either. But overall, I didn't question it. I didn't know all of the employees because it's a really large store. We were also always hiring new people. I had too much work to do, and after I brought in the carts, I had to go and clean the restrooms. My boss would always get mad if I missed an hour of cleaning the restrooms. At night, it would finally be easy to do so because there would be customers always coming in and out earlier. After that, I went back into the parking lot to continue working. The next stretch of time was pretty uneventful. The store only got quieter and quieter, and I was able to get most of the carts back inside of the store. But sometime later, I'm not really sure exactly how long, I saw several police cars arriving to the Target. Some had flashing lights. I was very curious as to what exactly was going on, but I didn't bother to ask. Some officers entered the store, and other cars went around to the backside. Eventually, my curiosity got the better of me, and I went inside and asked my boss what was going on. What I was told was that the store had been robbed. Apparently, items had been taken from the back room areas of the store and moved out through the back door. This was one of the doors used for deliveries. I would later find out that the man that I had seen on the side of the Target and walking inside had been part of it. He pretended to work there and went into the back room and opened up the door. There were guys waiting in a car right outside. He put a bunch of items inside and then they left. I ended up talking with police about what I had witnessed, but after that night, I didn't hear much about it again. I'm not sure if they found those guys or what. I just hope that my information helped. I'm not sure if I'm glad the guy didn't see me or not when I spotted him at the side of the building. I work at Target, and I'm going to tell you something that happened a couple of months ago. I've been working there for 6 months now, and I'm mainly a cashier. I do some other things around the store as well, though. For the entire time that I've been an employee, I've also been part-time. Most weeks, I get between 20 and 40 hours, with my record being 36. I work a lot of times at night, and our store closes at 10 p.m. But when I get to work, it's usually about 2 p.m. or so things are busier then. I have always parked at the far back of the parking lot and away from the store. We are not required to do so, but it's a habit for me. Plus, when I get there, the parking lot is often a lot busier. So one time, I was working 2 o'clock to 10 on a Saturday. When I arrived at Target at about 1:45 p.m., the parking lot was especially packed. Weekends are typically much busier than weekdays, and I don't remember if we had a sale going on or something, but it was really busy. I parked all the way at the back corner of the parking lot. The Target parking lot is connected with some other businesses as well. There was a Chili's restaurant that the parking lot connected very close to where I had parked. I got out and walked inside Target. Then I started my shift. It went pretty fast in the beginning. Over time, things slowed down, and eventually it became nighttime. The last couple of hours dragged on, but at 10 p.m. I was finally off. I clocked out and left the store. By now, it was nighttime and the parking lot was basically empty. There were a few cars in the middle, and I could see my car all by itself in the back far corner. I walked out to it and got inside. I drive a smaller SUV called a Jeep Cherokee. When I got inside my car, I did what I usually do. I have a habit of going on my phone and checking the text and stuff that I got during work, or at least during the last few hours of work. Then I drive home. On this night, as I sat in my car in the quiet parking lot, I noticed a man walking. He was coming out of the Chili's parking lot, which was also very quiet now at this hour. The man had a backpack on and started going closer to my car. I was expecting him to walk through the Target parking lot and then go who knows where. It seemed like he was going to go past my car, but I noticed him looking over at me a few times. When the man got directly behind my car, he then stopped. Then he got right up to the back of my window and started looking inside of it. I thought that this was really weird and didn't know what this guy was doing. I wasn't really sure what to do either. I couldn't drive away because he was blocking me. The guy was looking directly into the rear window to my car. I hoped that he would just walk away, but he didn't at first. The guy remained there for a very uncomfortable amount of time. I didn't want to open the window and ask him what he was doing or get out or anything. Instead, I just watched him and waited. I'm guessing that he was there for about 2 minutes, but obviously it felt like much longer. Finally, at last, the man moved away from my window and started walking away towards the Target. Right then and there, I should have backed away and left, but I didn't. The guy got about 15 feet from my car and then took his backpack off. I'm not really sure why I was still watching him, other than I was just curious. He opened up the backpack and then pulled out what appeared to be a hammer. Then he suddenly started charging at me. He was going straight towards my driver's door. I had little to no time to react. When he reached me, he swung the hammer at my driver's window and the window broke. By then, I was finally able to get the car into reverse and hit the gas. The man swung the hammer again, but only hit part of the front window, which cracked part of it, but the window didn't break. I sped out of the Target parking lot like a maniac and then called the police. I drove home and just hoped that the police would catch the guy. I was told later on that they did in fact find him. Apparently, he had smashed several windows of other vehicles in the area. I had been the only person inside of a vehicle at the time that the window got smashed, though. It remains one of the scariest things to ever happen to me. I worked at a Target department store briefly when I was aged 16 to 17. This was kind of a long time ago now, maybe like 2014 or 15. When I got the job, I was a cashier, and I worked there for about 6 months. It was a job that I liked, but wasn't the best job in the world or anything. I would mostly just be up at the check lanes ringing up customers. This occurrence happened probably about 3 months or so after I started working there. Back then, I had recently gotten my own car. It was actually my parents' car, but they let me use it because nobody else really did. I would drive it to and from work from my parents' house, which was almost 10 minutes away. This time, I was working from like 4 p.m. to 9 p.m. or something like that. I don't remember the exact hours, but that was probably pretty close. About an hour or so in, I got a phone call on my cell phone. I had my ringtone set to vibrate so that it wouldn't make noise at work, but I could feel it. I was unable to answer it or even look to see who it was because I was busy. There were several customers in line waiting for me to help them. My phone rang again before I had a chance to look. Finally, when there was a short break in people, maybe 10 minutes later, I looked. It was a number that I did not recognize and figured maybe it was a wrong number or something. I went back to work after that, but whoever it was called me yet again. It seemed pretty odd. As I was busy working, I don't even know how many more times the person called me. It was at least 3 or 4. When it was time for my break, I went in and looked to see who it was. By now it was probably about 7 p.m., and I saw that the same person kept calling me. As I was doing that, they called again. Now that I wasn't working, I answered it. I heard a man's voice speaking, and I did not recognize who it was. He asked if he was speaking to me, mentioning my name. I said yes, and was surprised. I asked who this was that was calling. The man said that he was waiting for me. He said he knew I was working at Target, and he would be waiting for me when I left by my car. He said he was in the parking lot. I was very worried when I heard this. I didn't know what to say and was speechless for a few moments. The guy then hung up on me. Suddenly, everything changed. It went from a normal shift to very weird and scary. For several minutes, I wasn't sure what to do. I didn't want to go out to my car, and the guy was there. Possibly it was just a joke, but I didn't want to take any chances. I knew that I was parked in the back of the parking lot where it was not well lit. I ended up calling my mom and telling her about the calls that I had received. She told me that she would pick me up, or my dad could. I did not feel safe walking out to my car. I also blocked the number that had been calling me. I went back to work after my break and kept a careful eye out. During the time that I was working, things were not as busy anymore. I was looking all around for anybody looking at me or seeming suspicious in any way. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary, though. When it was 9 o'clock and I got off, my mom and dad called me and said that they were there to pick me up. I was really happy I wouldn't have to go back to my car by myself. I left the Target and went to my parents' car right out front. We drove through the parking lot, and my dad wanted to go past my car. We did, and it was really dark, so we couldn't see much, but there was a car parked just a few spaces from mine, and somebody was inside of it. I couldn't tell any details about them, though. Could that have been the person who had been calling me? We drove away after that. I left my car at the Target for like an hour, and then my dad went and got it. He said that the guy was gone who had been there before. After that experience, the person never bothered me again. I still have lots of questions, though.